thank you so much for joining, everybody. Lovely to see you here. I don't know if any of you, like me, have really missed these calls, so we're really excited to be kind of relaunching them in a big way in 2026. So yeah, I'm Olivia Stamp. I have been, it's a real privilege for me because I kind of joined the actionism journey as an observer of these spotlight calls when they first started. And now here I am in the very privileged position of hosting. So a huge thank you to Tamasine for inviting me to do that. So lots of you I recognize, lots of you have seen before who might know a bit about actionism. But for those of you who don't, actionism is, I guess, really it's a movement to get people to take steps to act from kind of wherever your starting place is. It's also a film with the brilliant Ellie Meredith that was created by the Reaction team. We've got Heather on the call, we've got Ellie on the call. So glad to see you here. And actionism is essentially a journey from anxiety to action, because we believe that taking action, finding your people and taking action is the way to get us out of the paralysis and stuckness and often sadness that so many of us feel. And these spotlight calls are one of our ways of trying to do that in the world. So that's me.
Hello, so my name's Tamasine McCaig. I'm part of the Actionism team. We're kind of in an experimental phase when inspiring people and bringing people together seems to be the thing that we are good at and the thing that we enjoy. So we're hoping to do a lot more of that this year. One of the things that we enjoy doing the most, but personally, this is the thing I enjoy doing the most, is seeing everybody kind of come together in these spaces to hear from inspiring people like Parisa. So I'm going to let these guys do their thing, and I hope if anyone wants to and isn't already registered for the newsletter, that link that I've put in the chat, you can register for the newsletter there. Yeah, back to you.
Thank you so much. And so, yes, we've also got Parisa on the call, who we're going to hear lots from in a moment. But Parisa is the founder of Greener and Cleaner, which is an incredible community hub in the southeast of London. Tamsin and I met Parisa, gosh, when would it have been? Late last year, and both of us just kept, all three of us, I think all three of us cried at various points in the call, because we were just so emotional about having found each other, and the wonderful work that we were all trying to do in the world. And so I'm really, really excited to dig into Parisa's story in a moment. But just to give you a bit of a kind of flow of the call, we're, as Tamerson says, we're experimenting a little bit. So I'm going to try, and any feedback you have on how this works, to make these calls a little less broadcast, a little more interactive. So we're going to do a bit of a visioning exercise to settle in. And then I'm going to have a chat with Parisa, and we're going to learn more about her story and her work. We're going to put you in some breakout rooms to reflect on what you've heard and think about any questions that you want to ask. And as Tamsin says, if for any reason you're not able to go into breakout room today because of where you are, or you just don't feel comfortable, it's not your vibe today, that's totally fine. You can stay in the main room with us. Then we're going to do a Q&A with Parisa so that she can answer all of your questions that you come up with. And then to end the call, we're going to go back into breakout rooms, and you're going to decide on an action that you're going to take today. So this isn't it, it's a listening, but it's also going, okay, from what I've heard, what's something I can do differently today or this week that I wouldn't have done if I hadn't been on this call. So that's the plan. And to that end, I'm going to invite you all to close your eyes. Feel free to turn your camera off if you'd like to, if you feel more comfortable. So we're all going to take 3 deep breaths together and leave our worries, stresses, to-do lists, and other tabs at the metaphorical door. Okay, so we're all going to breathe in and out and in and out and in and out. Okay, we're going to take ourselves forward to December 2026. And let me tell you, you've had quite a year. And it all started on that spotlight call you attended in January. You heard an inspiring story of someone who had set up a thriving community hub. And it all started from a conversation in a pub because she couldn't sit back and do nothing about the world her children were growing up in. And from that moment, you realized that even the smallest step That conversation with a stranger or that moment of deep connection with an acquaintance could be the start of a much bigger journey. What was that conversation about? What was it that lit you up and made you feel alive? What actions did you take off the back of it? What spaces, physical and mental, did you spend more time in 2026? Whatever they were, I know you spent more time laughing, hugging, being present, and less time on your phone and in your head. A lot has happened, and the news remains scary, but you feel more resilient now, more equipped to handle whatever is coming. You smile and you open your eyes. It all starts here. Thank you, everyone. Um, and now we're going to get into the main event. So, Parisa, thank you so much for joining us today. I can't wait to have everyone hear your incredible story. And there's so much to cover. As I say, when we met you, I think we all spoke. I think we had a 45-minute call booked in and we spoke for about an hour and a half. So we won't have time to do that today, but we will do our very best. So, yeah, be great to just hear from you and then get a little bit of an introduction into what Greener and Cleaner actually is.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me, guys. My name is Parisa Wright. I'm the founder of Greener and Cleaner, which started off as a community group, became a CIC within about 3 or 4 months, and then converted to a charity in 2021. My sort of context, I guess, is that I'm half Iranian. I grew up very aware of what was going on in Iran. I also grew up very aware of what was going on with sort of racism in the 80s in southeast London, and sort of wanted to do human rights law and make a difference, and ended up going into law. Started off in human rights, but sort of couldn't find a way to be paid to do human rights and actually pay my mortgage. So ended up media entertainment, and now coming back in 2018, school climate strikes, on maternity leave with my second baby, and basically horrified that 5-year-olds were having to give up their childhood to beg adults to take action on climate, and horrified to look at our government and local authorities and feel that no one was actually, you know, didn't feel like anyone was equally horrified by the situation. Not anyone as in regular people, but anyone as in the people who are supposed to take action. And so I felt that either I could feel my children were held for ransom by the politics of the local area I lived in or the government of the time that they were around, or I could try and do something. So when I went back from my maternity leave in 2019, I had created an A to Z of donation and recycling. I'd had some chats with people in pubs around the local area, just in regular conversations with other mums or other local people where we'd met up and other people had joined the conversation. And in the beginning of 2019, started sharing that A to Z of donation recycling. Where can you take those slightly used shoes that the charity shop doesn't want? Where do you take the glasses frames? Blah, blah, blah. Everyone could, provide examples of local charities, local people who needed those things rather than dumping them. And that brought people on a journey to talk about the harder hitting areas, perhaps. And so I went back to work, got involved. I was at ITV, got involved in sustainability there, but in my own community where I felt I could make the biggest difference, maybe even if it was just on my own road. I set up Greener and Cleaner as a community group, and we started meeting up above the pub regularly, once a month. But from the very first meeting, it was interesting. It was originally called Climate Action Bromley. And in that very first meeting, we said we were people from all over southeast London. So it was Greenwich Borough, Lewisham Borough, Croydon Borough, and Bromley Borough. And we said that if we call it Climate Action Bromley or anything climate action, the word climate and the word action will be problematic because we won't be able to work with councils, we won't be able to work with residents associations, loads of PTAs will struggle with it. And we just wanted it to be for everyone. We wanted everyone to be able to connect with how climate was relevant to them and what sustainability changes they could make in their homes, in their schools, in their businesses, in their communities without it feeling political. And unfortunately, even back then, that language was difficult. Now it's much more toxified. So we called it Greener and Cleaner, Bromley and Beyond. Then we called it Greener and Cleaner because no one can say they don't want their place, their community to be green and clean. And from the first moment, we also said we don't want it to be a talking shop. Every month, there's going to be somebody from the community sharing a skill or sharing knowledge at an event, usually one or two, in the community, which we would, highlight on social media and the website that we created or whatever, share with like WhatsApp groups, and it'll be a sew-a-thon, or it'll be a composting session, or it'll be a quiz the local recycling council officer or whatever. And that's how it grew. So we knew that people could feel that something physical was happening, even if it wasn't the big thing that they wanted, that we could have more conversations with the council, we could get more people doing public consultations, and that things started growing to the end of the first year, where we did the first climate hustings for the borough. We raised £50,000 for a local school for air pollution measures, got a crossing for them as well. Did the first South East London schools event where we brought them together, again, peer-to-peer skills and knowledge sharing. And so, yeah, and it just basically grew from there. But if it's okay, I would love to play a video to show where we are kind of now, because it's been a crazy journey, and I can't believe thinking about that, where we are now, really. If it's okay, I don't know if Tamsin, you're happy to play the video.
I really love coming to the hub.
I just live for Mondays to come here.
I came into the hub for an energy efficiency clinic, and I picked up a few tips. And now we're saving a bit of cash at home and also saving some energy, which is good.
So we have got 39 laptops that have been donated today, lots of phones, and bags and boxes of cables.
I heard about the hub through various mental health support groups. It's a wonderful place to come. It's probably the one thing that saves me from absolute despair in my life.
Since 2019, Greener and Cleaner has been going, but in 2022 we set up our pilot community hub here in the Glade Shopping Centre in Bromley, and it's been open 5 days a week since then for the last 3.5 years, and well over 30,000 people have come through these doors. On top of that, we've been doing pop-up events out in hospitals, in universities, in schools, in parks all over South East London. And these have been inspired by what people have said they want and they need and what they care about for their local environment, for their well-being, and building community resilience.
Greener and Cleaner did an energy-saving visit to you a few months ago, and we advised you to switch your tariff to a fixed tariff.
Which I did. I can phone John at any time of the day and he'll always help me.
I know and love what we do in here, and it gives me energy every time I come through the doors. It became very clear as soon as I got engaged with people in Greener and Cleaner that this was a community I could become a part of, that it would become something more than work.
Once you start looking for litter, it's very therapeutic, but it's great to do it as a social activity as well. I think there's a lot of people who want to get involved, who want to do more. Picking up litter like this is hope, because it looks like everyone else has given up. But actually we need to bring power really back into the community. It is an uphill challenge. Well done, good job.
I rented an SDS hammer drill from the Library of Things here in Glades in Bromley, and it was easy to pick up and collect. I can just come to the kiosk here, tap a few buttons, and I've got my drill. And I've learned today about some of the other things the hub does, like the community sewing machine. But I think it's really, really good that people can learn these things at little to no cost as well, and they're skills for life that they can pass on.
Carol initially brought us the sewing box at the Beckenham Repair Cafe, and it's been such a joy to see it restored, and it just looks so lovely, and it's so nice to hear the history of it and know that we've restored something that's so loved.
I think they've done it very well indeed, don't you? I'm very impressed with their skills.
I saw that there's a mending clinic, and the dress that I brought in today, I need to do some repairs on it. The staff, the volunteers, they're very, very helpful. It has helped me to learn some few things on how to do the things myself as well.
Another thing that we've grown over the past 12 months is our community allotment and garden, where we're teaching each other amazing food growing skills, where we're learning about creating habitats for local wildlife, and it's wonderful seeing all the generations and cultures coming together.
Oh, you're gonna put your little pad in here? Oh, yeah! We got a lick.
We've also developed an amazing new offering for 18 to 25-year-olds called Connect the Buds.
It's quite hard meeting people in real life. It can be a space to come and learn a skill or do a workshop, have a cup of tea, learn something new. We don't have a lot of those kinds of places anymore.
I think the vision for Greener and Cleaner is that every community across the UK should have access to a space that feels like it's owned by them and that is invested in the future of this planet and those communities that they're serving. We're trying to demonstrate through doing it in our space what's worked and what hasn't worked so that other communities can set up, and the blueprint is our contribution. We've recently opened a support service for micro-sized businesses in the borough who want to be more ethical, more sustainable. We designed that because businesses were telling us that they couldn't get any help across South London. We're already networking with incredible groups on how do we do things together. Everybody has something that they can grab hold of and make a difference with, and if we are all doing that all of the time, we will get to where we actually need to be.
It makes my week. I look forward to it all the time.
Thank you so much, Tamsin. So what I was going to say was we felt that what we had on Facebook and online and the pop-up events we were doing in the community, it was a very visible thing. People could walk past, people litter picking or sewing in a cafe or out in the park doing a talk or a nature walk, whatever, and they could see, oh, my community's doing something. But we felt that unless people were specifically looking for us, they couldn't find us. And because our events were pop-up, they couldn't rely on them. So during the pandemic, we started doing some projects with the local shopping centre, and we did some online workshops for people to be able to dial into how to sew, how to do some food growing, how to create habitats. And we videoed workshops, and our members, our volunteers, we're all volunteers, videoed things, and we submitted them to the shopping centre so that they could then promote them and have them as part of their festival. And afterwards they asked us, what would you like? And the top of our list was, we'd really like a space. We wanted a space that was, you know, that was mainstream, that didn't have to be niche. It didn't have to be the sort of traditional church or library or civic centre where only specific people went. It could be something that felt that it was the heart of the community taking action. It was the heart of the community, therefore it's for everybody. It wasn't about poverty. It wasn't about age. It was for everyone. And from the first day we opened up that unit in that shopping centre, and we chose to be opposite public toilets, because we wanted families to come in with children. We wanted elderly people to be able to come in comfortably. We wanted people with health vulnerabilities to come in without anxiety and know where the loos were, literally opposite our site. And we also chose to be near a McDonald's for the same reason that McDonald's chooses to be in our bus stops, because we wanted to make sure that everyone knew that this was relevant to everyone. Whatever you eat, or however you shop, whatever your politics, there's somebody in there like you sharing a skill, and that was the idea. And so we then went to 5 days a week in this space, which was amazing. We were lucky enough to basically manage to get the word out to people and manage to go and speak out at COP26. We managed to get a bit of seed funding to launch that project. We also raised about £50,000 through community crowdfunding. And we were lucky because there was the vacant unit grants at the time as well, to basically be able to apply to post-pandemic to do out the unit, because it was a cafe and we had to rip loads of stuff out and try and make it look not like the poor sort of fringe cousin of everything else in the shopping centre, if you see what I mean. Try and make it feel normal and mainstream and, you know, just part of the regular. And what started off as a community hub, as a community sustainability hub in the way we talked about it, has very much become a community hub, because over 50% of the people who come in there will come in for cost of living reasons, for mental health reasons, for loneliness reasons, for employability reasons, for language reasons. You know, we have more diversity in the regular people who come in there than the borough in which it's based. And there's lots of reasons for that. We've collaborated with lots of different community groups and charities that represent marginalised groups. We've gone out and we know that like a third of people who come into that shopping centre in Bromley are from Lewisham Borough, for example. There's lots of different reasons, but it's been a really exciting ride, and we've got some exciting next steps coming up, which we'll talk about.
Absolutely. I don't know about anyone else, but I both wanted to be in that video in the hub, start my own, which we'll talk about. But what an amazing thing you've done. One of the questions that I have is that you've achieved so much, Parisa, over the years, and I think can you talk to us a little bit about kind of that, we'll kind of go both ends of the journey before we put people into breakout groups. From that very, very initial, you talked about, how did you find the bravery to just start having those conversations? What was it that allowed you to take that first step into setting up what has become this astonishingly meaningful space?
I think what's really funny is that just some like offhand conversations in the pub, if I'm honest, initially with some other mums, and then sort of sharing this idea of this sort of A to Z of donation and recycling on some local Facebook groups, and getting such an overwhelming response of people who wanted to share their tips and people who were looking to work out what they could do with that cot bed mattress. Oh, you can upcycle it into this. And suddenly people being able to have a space. I mean, it started on Facebook. I know that's not the greatest place to do it, but it worked for us at that time, to be able to share their tips, of upcycling things or reducing waste or reducing their water consumption or their energy or their favorite vegan recipe or whatever. It was just really powerful that actually I realized that I wasn't on my own. There were loads of people who felt the same way I did. And when I felt like that, then I was like, well, okay, let's get together, above this pub, and let's sort of just start talking it through, and how together we can move things along on lots of different levels, like one-to-one, us together working with the public, but also how we build relationships with residents associations, other charities, and also how we try and work with the council and lobby the council, not lobby, but encourage the council, for both ourselves, but also as a group, but also by encouraging other people to see, whether it's a resident association or a PTA that one of us was associated with, for them to see how that public consultation or that date for a net zero deadline was relevant to them and their beneficiaries. I think it felt like there wasn't that clarity of like, yes, there's this thing, but no one really understood how it was relevant to them. And so suddenly when individuals started going, I'm worried about it too, what can we do? And we started coming together. That was it. It was like finding, I hate the term tribe, but it's like finding other people who cared about it. And what was great was it didn't matter if someone came at it from an air pollution perspective or a nature perspective, because we wanted to be 360. We wanted to be inclusive. And it didn't matter now, it doesn't matter now to me if someone comes in because of loneliness, because we know, we've done research with CAST, we know that people go on that journey. And what's amazing is they even come on that journey with us to the harder hitting areas like energy, like transport, like food, which are the more controversial, difficult ones. So it just sort of, it started off and it snowballed, and really finding other people gave me the drive. And when there was like, I was like, oh God, I'm so tired after work. I can't be bothered. I have to go to the, sounds terrible. But there were times where I was like, oh my God, because I felt like I had to be at the pub. I had to chair it. I couldn't put that on anyone else. I had to WhatsApp people and Facebook people and make sure they were coming to the meeting. And then like when we put on events in between, I had to follow up with people who'd commented that they were interested in air quality or interested in this or that, and say, don't forget this is happening next week. Don't forget this is happening tomorrow, which... But it worked, because then those people did turn up, because if they feel that there are people who know them and who are connecting with them and doing it with them, then we all sort of came on a journey together.
Just, yeah, absolutely the spirit of this group. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I guess the kind of next thing, the last question I'm going to ask you before we go in some breakout rooms, for people to have a bit of a reflect and hopefully find their own tribe today, is all the brilliant work that you've done, all of the learning that you've done. And I think particularly I'm fascinated by this language piece and making it feel like it's a community hub. That's kind of the core theme, and people can come from kind of any aspect. You're doing some really exciting work on turning this into a blueprint and helping other people around the country to start their own hubs. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So in 2022, I left my legal career of 20 years to focus on this work full time. And honestly, I didn't leave it because of the community hub. I left it because I believe that if we were lucky enough to get some seed funding, we should be using the community hub as a living lab to test solutions to common challenges, whether that was diversifying funding streams, whether that was increasing the reach and the diversity of the beneficiaries, participants, volunteers, staff, all these different issues that we all have in common, no matter what area of sustainability and community work we focus on. And I wanted to make sure that all this work around the community hub was then going to be turned into something that could be shared, because my background in legal, certainly in the last 11 years in house, you use templates all the time. You wouldn't be able to do the work for the money that you have, the budgets that you have, if you didn't use templates and you didn't share learnings all the time. And that's something that we don't really have in the movement of community sustainability. Unless you're lucky enough to be funded by a specific funder, or you're fitting in a specific model. But we also don't have that sort of cross-pollination. So what I wanted to do was, and we managed to secure 50% of the funding, and we're kind of at the moment sucking it up and like kind of doing the rest of it ourselves as well. But basically we are creating a community hub templates blueprints package, from everything how to negotiate the key terms to negotiate in a standard, shopping centre or shop lease, to how to get zero rates, to what interesting projects and workshops and different activities we put on, and what different groups and demographics get out of them and are attracted to in them, to impact data that we've got, to templates and literal forms and literal slide decks where we've gone into businesses and taught them carbon literacy training, or taught them go green, save money, and therefore raise some money for the charity. All those different, the wide range of things in a package, so that either people can go and set up their own franchise style for free, obviously, or, and I think this is going to be 75%, 80% of the use, take that package and take out what bits of it they might be struggling with, or that they want to strengthen within their organisation, or might be useful to them, basically, whatever's useful to them. So that's really exciting. So that's going to be made available, and there's an expression of interest form that Tamasine has just put into the chat, which you can click on and say, yes, I would like to know when the blueprints package is ready. But also they funded us to do some one-to-ones with groups and even some council officers. So if community groups, charities, grassroots organisations are keen to set up either a community hub or some other permanent space, it could be 1 day a week, could be 7 days a week, but want to chat through and explore whether that's possible for them, where they are on the journey, or take the next steps because they've already started on that journey, or need some advice on a specific element of it, whether that is partnerships or fundraising, or what to look for in a space, or how to man it, or the training for the volunteers, whatever it is, we can help them explore it initially or take those next steps sort of advice. And so again, you can click on the expression of interest form and say, yep, we'd like to have one of those free funded one-to-ones that Esme has kindly helped us be able to do. And then finally, we're also setting up as a separate thing. We're acknowledging the fact that all of the community groups, charities, people on the ground who are doing amazing things have probably themselves got video case studies, written case studies, templates, forms, blueprints, guidelines, things that they've got that they can share, research, impact data that they can share with each other. And again, unless you're in a specific model like transition towns or CECs or One Planet Living, you often aren't part of a network that you can share sort of resources and experiences with, or a funder. But also often there isn't that cross-pollination in the same way of just having it as a non-branded kind of network. So what we're doing is, when it's not branded Greener and Cleaner, it's just going to be called the Community Sustainability Support Network for England as a region, because the regions of Scotland, Ireland and Northern Ireland have something similar already, which is funded by regional government. And the idea is to pilot it for 2 or 3 years and then get government funding to fund it. So we've got some funding certainly for the next couple of years. And what that will do and enable people to come together once a month for, yes, sharing a case study success story, and there'll be a donation to that charity. A member being able to present on their challenge and discuss it with their peers. And then members and the chair being able to highlight opportunities for funding, and even more importantly, opportunities to collaborate on funding bids. So you might be doing a repair cafe in Cornwall, but you might be looking for other people doing other things in Cornwall, or you might be looking for other repair cafes all over England. And that way you can come together on those funding bids, on those research bids, on that campaign, on that delivery, on that event. And then behind the scenes, we'll have that resources space for members only to be able to share their resources with each other, tag them air pollution, tag them elderly, tag them cost of living, whatever it is, so that we can all help each other share those resources in a really central space that is not under a brand that is sort of implying that you are part of the brand. It's just clearly a geographical network for England doing what it says on the tin. So that's another thing that I'm really excited about, because for me, my lived experience was we didn't have that network. We didn't have that cross-pollination, with that sharing of learnings, that opportunity to collaborate on bids. We just didn't have any of that. So like my problem solving background says that's something that's missing. I talk to civil servants, they say it needs to be risk free, so we're going to pilot it. And so again, you can sign up on the expression of interest form and join. And it should be launching in March. We've already getting the website sorted out and everything now, so it's very, very exciting.
It really is very exciting. I'm going to change up the format of the call because I'm allowed to do that. So we're actually just going to open the floor to Q&A. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself. If you don't want to do that, put them in the chat and I can read them out. But I'm sure everyone has millions of questions for Parisa. I know I do if you don't unmute yourselves. So, but I'll open the floor to anyone else who would like to ask something about this journey.
Or raise a hand if you want to, so I can see you and I'll spotlight you.
Heather.
Hello, lovely to see you again, Parisa. I have a couple of generic questions, I suppose, but I always like to know the answer to these questions, which is what have been your biggest challenges, would you say? And also, what has been the most surprising thing that you've learned from doing all of this?
Thank you. That is a really good questions. So, biggest challenges. There are a few. And I think everyone will empathize with this, is that it can take a toll on your mental health when you're the key person leading something. And certainly for that first year, when I was reasonably alone leading it, it was quite challenging. But quite quickly, other people stepped up to be part of the sort of core leadership team, including our now CEO, who's amazing. She's been our CEO for about 1.25 years now. She's fantastic, Claire Searle. And I wouldn't have coped in terms of the rejection from, counsellors and funders and things like that, especially initially, and just that drive to keep going if I'd just been entirely on my own, because physically and emotionally, when you're doing a full-time job, I have 2 small children as well. It's quite a lot. Funding has been a real challenge. And in 2024, at the beginning of the year, 2 funders that we thought were going to come along with multi-year funding through conversations with their grant managers didn't end up doing it. So I had to run around like a blue ass fly and basically, really hurt myself trying to find the money to keep the charity going. And even then we still had to make some people redundant. But luckily it sort of paid off and everybody pulled together, obviously. And so by the September of that year, we'd heard back from the lottery. And by the April of last year, we heard back from ESME. And in the meantime, City Bridge as well were really supportive. And those 3 funders, by that point, we'd been going since, for about 4 or 5 years, or 6 years, from the very beginning of our journey. But it made all the difference to have multi-year funding, because till then we had been going project to project, year to year, just trying to find little bits. And anyone who tells you I've got a space, that's great, but you have to man that space if you want to have it regular, reliable and mainstream. Otherwise it comes across as fringe. It's not safe for your volunteers. Great if you've got full-time people, but really if you want to have it inclusive and mainstream the conversation for everybody and engaging everybody, I think that's really important. And finally, the toxification of language. Since 2022, was it 2023? I can't remember. 2022 or I think it was 23 when Rishi Sunak went on TV, the richest prime minister in English history, and said that net zero was an attack on regular people and the poor. And that has been repeatedly, like, whatever, love it or hate it, ULEZ is not an attack on the poorest. The poorest do not own vehicles and they live in the worst air quality. And so much of sustainability, we know, right, that is about the most climate vulnerable having the smallest carbon footprint, and yet being able to benefit so much from community sustainability, and having their voices heard on it. And that, for me, it's the biggest human rights issue of our time. And that's why I'm so glad my career has come 360 back to this human rights issue. And that's what I'm passionate about. But yeah, so those are the biggest issues, I'd say. Oh my God, what was the second bit? Perimenopause and fibromyalgia.
I've just asked, Pam's got her virtual hand up. Would you like to ask a question, Pam?
I was very interested to hear whether anywhere else in the country has got a hub like you set up, community sustainability or greener hub. because we're way down in Dorset. It's a long way from Kent. I'm wondering if I could help set up one in Blandford in Dorset, but I don't know whether there is one there already or anything like that. Do you have a map of where similar hubs have been set up?
So I think, well, there's two things. First of all, when we set up the network that we're setting up, there's going to be a map on the front, which is open to the public. So every time someone fills in the membership form, they will be plotted onto that map for their organisation, so people can then start seeing that. Because otherwise, I think you can go into like the CEC network or the Transition Town network and see those networks hubs, but I mean, Transition Town isn't a hub, but there are some hubs plotted on some maps, but they seem to be based on models or geography. I know that in Exeter, or certainly around Devon, there is quite a lot of sustainability work going on. So if you're not sure whether something's going on, it's always really good to do some Googling and even searching Facebook if you're on Facebook, but otherwise just do some Googling and see what's going on and just use the words community, sustainability, community, climate, because honestly, if there was a group that was already doing anything like this where we were, I definitely would have joined them. And so I think it's better if you can find people who are doing something brilliant, join them. If not, work with local councils or local residents associations. And we did do a talk for local parish councils, and we talked about how this sort of model can be scaled up and scaled down depending on the size of your community that you're trying to do this for. You could be in a little village in the Shetland Islands, and your mainstream space could be your post office, and your regularity could be every Sunday afternoon. There's lots of ways of scaling it up and down depending on how many people you've got around you, what your geography is, the culture around, etc. But yes, I'm afraid I don't have a map yet, but it's something we're working on, and I hope we get to a point. I would love to get to a point where we can approach Transition Town and everyone else and just say, is there anyone we're missing on here, so that I don't know if we'll have the resource, but if we can approach those groups and say, would you at least like to be plotted on this map, so we can have one map that has all different people, but just on community sustainability. So whether it's an allotment or a community energy project or a repair cafe or whatever it is, a climate hub, and there are other climate hubs like Guildford Net Zero. Zero Guildford had a brilliant hub for a couple of years. They no longer have that space, but it was fantastic. But there are other people who are doing hubs. I think in Islington they had a hub at one point. In Lewisham there was the Make Do space at one point. There are lots of quite regular repair cafes that could definitely be extended by other people collaborating with them. But yeah, I think there is stuff all over the place, but I think it's place by pace at the moment, having to just sort of Google and see what's out there, I'm afraid.
Thanks, Parisa. Pam, we're just going to try and get through some extra follow-up questions in the chat. But if you want to DM an email, we can, and hopefully anything that we don't get to today, I hope, Parisa, we've agreed this, that we can send a follow-up of some Q&A round in an email afterwards.
Absolutely. And also the expression of interest form, which is in the chat, and I'll put it there again. If you want to have a one-to-one to explore whether a community hub's possible, which it sounds like the sort of conversation that's needed, then just, happy to do that.
What an amazing outcome of this call. Wonderful. And Parisa, you have to speak to Gav, who I saw join the call, about maps, because he and I have some thoughts on maps. So I think there's quite a few. I'm keen that we do spend some time in breakout rooms. So I'm gonna kind of, there's a general interest here for sure around your funding model, and particularly how you developed from volunteer-led to CIC to charity. And yeah, so kind of if you could give an overview of how that worked, then I think we'll send into breakout rooms, and then any extra questions we'll get to after the call. Like, you could explain kind of that journey and kind of how you're funded right now.
We had no funding until we raised 50 grand for a local school project to put in green screens, trees, to campaign. Well, we got the crossing, but and air purifiers, but we had no income until we were going for the community hub, and then basically we realised that though 80 people had said that they were going to run the community hub, suddenly everyone dropped like flies when you needed them to commit to a specific shift every week. And so we quickly realised that as a minimum you needed to have members of staff at the hub, well, one member of staff at any time at the hub, to make sure it was open, closed, to look after the volunteers, to make sure some sort of activity was going on. And so, as I said, we were very lucky to get some initial seed funding that covered us for the first year to 18 months, plus also the empty units funding and also some crowdfunding. And other than that, since then, obviously, it's now 4 years into that project, right? So the main sources of our funding have been, yes, trusts and foundations, yes, some community fundraising, but sort of limiting that, because what we offer in the hub is generally free or very cheap, because we don't want money to be an issue. And we also don't want the community to feel we're constantly asking them for money during a cost of living crisis. So we have done like maybe one crowdfunder every 2 years, but we also do a few events a year where people might pay for a ticket to come to the theatre, and we put on a show or comedy night or something like that. And then we do some corporate offerings, which is like we do lunch and learns for big businesses and smaller businesses. We do some training like around carbon literacy or climate fresk. We do corporate volunteering, where we get people to actually pay a donation as well. And there's different sort of corporate partnerships and collaborations that we've done there, which is quite interesting, again, which will be going into that sort of templates package. And some of my slide decks are going to go into the CSSN sort of like resources thing as well. So other people can go out and go, local businesses, would you like to do this? And then we've done things which have been like selling things in our community hub that people have made. But sales, you know, they're all sort of like crocheted or, you know, upcycled draft excluders, or, you know, bird boxes made out of bits of wood or whatever it is. And so they don't really bring in, you know, that isn't a sort of sustainable model for making money, really. And we do sometimes do little birthday parties and things like that. Again, we do it relatively cheaply. So, and we do premium workshops as well, so that people who are maybe able to afford to pay, let's say, £25 instead of £65 for a 2-hour sewing workshop can do that. But again, if you think about it, you have like 10, 12 sewing machines, that's whatever, £250, £300. That's not someone's salary. But yes, so I hope that gives a bit of a sense. But we are working towards getting more and more diversification of funding streams and testing different things, even things like referral schemes and stuff, so that then all of that learning can again be shared in that blueprints package, and also can be shared into that network.
Thank you so much. And we could keep talking for hours and hours, but I want to give everyone a chance to talk to each other. So we're going to send you into some breakout rooms now. We've only got about 7 to 8 minutes in those breakout rooms. But what we'd love for you to talk about is what has kind of most inspired you today, and what action are you going to take? Whether that's today or next week, or ideally this week, what are you going to do off the back of this call?
Hopefully you found that useful. There's never enough time, is there? We've just popped for everyone coming back. We've just popped in the chat there the prompt to think of an action that you could take. So the idea is not that you kind of have to decide you're setting up a community hub like Parisa has done, although, you know, that would be pretty cool if people did. Sounds like there's an interest from some people in doing that, but it could be as simple as, you know, sending a message to somebody that you keep telling yourself you're going to reconnect with, or it could be chatting to somebody in the queue when you're queuing to, you know, buy a stamp, or hosting an actionism screening. I'm going to put a link in the chat in a minute for how you could host an actionism screening. But yeah, any small action. Olivia and I ran a workshop recently where we found that the real power in leaving a session like this and being able to have committed to doing one small thing, whether it's today or whether it's this weekend, is really powerful, because once you take that first step, then you're well on your way to the next step, and every journey starts somewhere. So Olivia, I can't see you, but I think you're back.
So yeah, thank you so much. So yeah, as Tamasine says, one of the we're not asking you to create your own community hub tomorrow, though if you do want to do that, brilliant. And you can email Parisa and have a chat about that. We know we've already set up one connection, so that's great. But please put in the chat one action that you're committing to today. It doesn't mean you have to do it today. But it could be, yeah, as Tamasine was just saying, could be hosting a screening of actionism, which we think would be a great commitment to do. Just spread the word, spread the idea. My commitment, because I'm not seeing any rolling in, everyone's being shy. My commitment is I met a neighbor of mine who is a woman in her 60s at an intergenerational conversation cafe a few months ago, and we decided we both went because we wanted some friends who weren't our own age. And she's become a friend, but I haven't spoken to her since she had her knee surgery a few weeks ago. So I'm going to reach out and chat to her because she wants to do some community action together. So that's mine. What else have we got coming in? Setting up in a community hub in a recently closed library. That's brilliant. Reach out to a local community group, connect to the mappers. Anna, looking forward to hearing from you. Thanks, Ellie. Learning to love where we live. Little subtle plug there. I appreciate for some writing that I do. Contact the local philosophy school around using it as a hub. That sounds like a great idea. Yeah, resilience for people working in Angela. I would actually love to chat to you about that. Parisa and I were at a gathering where we started that conversation. So I will put my email in the chat as well. And I want to make sure that everyone can leave on time. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. I hope it's brightened your Friday. I hope you have lovely afternoons, and I hope to see you at the next one. Please spread the word about these as well. Feel free to reach out to us with any feedback, any thoughts, any other people who might want to you think would be good to be featured in a spotlight. And just a huge thank you to Parisa for joining us today and sharing your story. Claps all round. We'll do the Zoom clap. But thank you so much, everyone. And have a wonderful weekend when you get there.